Okay, so we're finished, but there's one last important step to do. If you actually want anyone to see your animation, we're going to have to get it out of After Effects. So for this, we're going to be rendering our animation as an MP4 using Adobe Media Encoder. And that's actually a separate program which installs alongside After Effects, so you should have it. It's not complicated and we can launch it all from inside After Effects, so let's get to it. Okay, so we're done with our animation. The last thing we need to do is export it so you can show everybody. Otherwise, what's the point? You don't want to have to open up After Effects every time you want to show someone something you've worked on. So let's export this animation. So make sure you've got your balloons project selected, balloons template, if that's the one you want to export. And you just go up to composition up here, and we're going to add it to the Adobe Media Encoder queue. So just click on composition, go to add to Adobe Media Encoder queue. Just to give you a little bit of background history of what's going on in After Effects. After Effects, we want to put an MP4 out. So hopefully you've heard of an MP4, which is the most common video format currently. So we want that. After Effects used to export MP4s, and then it went through a big long period where it didn't export MP4s, and now it does export MP4s again. So if you're using an After Effects version, which is in that part, in that middle bit where you can't export MP4s, which is probably pretty likely because they've only recently added it and they've taken it away ages ago. Cut a long story short, let's use Media Encoder because that should be fine for everybody. So what would happen, what should have happened is you should have clicked on composition, add to Adobe Media Encoder queue, and Adobe Media Encoder should have opened if you didn't have it open already. So switch to Adobe Media Encoder if you're not on it. So it should be down here on your applications bar, or if you're on a Mac, it will be also down there. And your balloons template, or whatever your composition is called, should have appeared in the render queue here. My default is H.264, which is what we want. That's what an MP4 codec is. So if it's not that, you can use this drop down here and make sure you're on H.264. And then the default should be match source high bitrate, but if it's not, click on this drop down and do match source high bitrate, and then you just need to choose an export location where you want to save it. Save, and then you just need to press this little green play button up here and that will render your video. And hopefully this won't take very long. So when it's done, it should say status done here and give you a little green tick, and your beautiful pop animation is ready to view. Ah, finally, we can show your friends, your dad, your gran, and a billion strangers online your beautiful animation and bask in their praise. It wasn't a long one this, but let's quickly recap our steps so you can solidify it in your mind. First, make sure the composition you want to render is selected either in the timeline window or in the project window. Then go up to composition at the very top of the After Effects window and go down to add to Adobe Media Encoder queue. Media Encoder should open, and then with a little bit of waiting probably, your composition should appear in the render queue. Then make sure you're outputting an H.264, which is the render codec for an MP4, and set your output settings to match source high bitrate, and then select the folder where you want the MP4 to go. After that, you can just press the green play button at the top right of Media Encoder window and everything should start rendering. Amazing, so you've now finished your animation and you've now outputted a file ready to share. In the next video, I'm going to be taking you through the other example pop animations that I made that I showed you at the beginning of this class. And then in the video after that, I'm going to be setting you some homework so that you can apply your knowledge to something practical. So make sure you watch till then. I just want it to stick in your minds rather than just watching it, following me, and then you're finished. So I'll see you there.